What's going on, everybody? Today I'm going to show you guys how to meal prep these absolutely super tasty Carne Asada burrito bowls, which are just a favorite of ours. And frankly, I've been on a burrito bowl kick lately for my lunch meal preps, and I simply cannot get enough of this recipe, so I'm excited to share it. So let's jump into how to make it. We'll start with our Carne Asada marinade. So what I have here is 860 grams of sliced flank steak, but not like razor thin as you might for something like a cheesesteak. I still want a little bit of bite to them. Now for the marinade, we'll go in with 65 grams of soy sauce, 20 grams of brown sugar. We'll grate in 2 small garlic cloves or 1 big one. Add in about half a cup of diced cilantro, and then the juice of 2 limes. Now we can go ahead and mix this all together, and then we can set it off to the side and let marinate for however long you have. In the meantime, while that's marinating, let's cook some rice. So just like last week, I'm going to go in with 250 grams of washed white long grain rice. We'll let this toast for a second or so, and then we can go ahead and add in our water, or chicken stock if that's what you prefer. We'll mix this together and then let the rice simmer for however long it takes to cook. Alright, now with our rice cooked through, we'll add in a few quick things before we set it off to the side. First, we'll add in about half a teaspoon of salt, then about 1/3 of a cup of chopped cilantro, or more if you want more. And then finally, the juice of 1 whole lime. So go ahead and mix this all together, make sure it's all well incorporated and distributed evenly, and then we can set the rice off before we come back to it later. Perfect, now let's come back to our steak. To a cast iron set on medium-high heat, we'll add in a little bit of oil and then toss in our steak, and don't overcrowd the pan, otherwise too much juice will release from the steak and you'll end up boiling your meat. You don't want that obviously because then you won't develop any color, and with no color means no flavor. So you can just do it in batches like I'm doing it here. But we'll season our steak with a pinch of salt, some black pepper, Ancho chili powder, and then ground cumin. And then just repeat this process until all your steak is cooked. And for the seasonings, what I'm listing in the recipe are the quantities for all 860 grams of steak. If you're going to cook it in batches like this, you can more or less just eyeball the seasoning, just hitting each batch with a good pinch or so of each seasoning. But either way, my point is that don't add 2 teaspoons of chili powder, for instance, per batch. That would make this inedible, so don't do that. Okay, so all of my steak's now cooked. I've removed it from a pan and set it off into a bowl. Now we can go ahead and turn our heat to medium or so. We'll add in a little bit more oil, and then we'll toss in 300 grams of red bell pepper and 300 grams of green bell pepper. And we'll add the same seasoning to the vegetables. Half a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of chili powder, and then half a teaspoon of ground cumin. Now we'll just let this sear and develop some color. And this is why we cook our steak first, because the nice part of this is that these vegetables are scooping up all of that leftover marinade that was left over in the pan, which will obviously add a ton of flavor to this dish. Alright, once these have started to soften, I'm going to add in 20 grams of sliced jalapeno. And you can add more or less depending on how much you like jalapeno, and you can add it at different stages of the cooking process. Some people like a more raw jalapeno flavor, so you can add it towards the end here, while some like a more sauteed flavor, and I'm in that camp, so I'm going to add it a little bit earlier in the cooking process so it has more time to cook. Now after a couple minutes or so, and once our veggies are about done, we're going to add in 2 cloves of minced garlic. We'll hit this with some oil and then just let it toast for a second, getting a little brown on that garlic. And then once there, we can go ahead and mix everything together. Now we get a bowl here and just set all of our veggies off to the side until we're ready to prep. Now one more final thing and we'll be done here. To the same cast iron, let's turn the heat to low, add a little bit more oil, and then toss in 350 grams of drained black beans. And they need a lot of salt, so I'm going to add in about half a teaspoon or so, or almost a teaspoon if necessary, of salt, about a half a teaspoon of black pepper, the zest of 1 lime or half a lime depending on how much you want, and either the juice of half of a really good juicy lime or 1 whole lime like I did, since mine was a bit stubborn and hard to work with. Now we'll just let this simmer for a minute or so, let all these flavors get to know each other. And then once there, we can give it a good final mix, and this too can be set off into a mixing bowl. But now with our beans cooked, we're ready to prep. Alright, so we'll create 4 little sections in our meal prep containers. We'll go in with our cilantro lime rice first, which we'll just set to one side of the bowl like so. We'll try to organize and tuck that in real neatly. And then once there, we'll go in with our black beans next, which will pair really well next to our rice. So if you're someone like me who likes to eat both the rice and beans together, you have that option. So get that added, and then next to our beans, we'll add in our roasted veggies. And then finally, we'll add in our Carne Asada into this final tranche of the containers here. And this was a decent amount of steak, so you really might have to tuck it in there. But then what I'm also going to do is take these remaining steak juices that were left over in the bowl and spoon those over the steak. And I would recommend doing this. There's a lot of good flavor in there, so you really don't want to skip out on that. And then just to finish everything off, I'm going to add in 10 grams of cotija cheese and some chopped cilantro over the top for garnish. Just like that, we're done. You've got 5 super tasty lunches or dinners for the week, whatever you're making it for. But thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll be back with more recipes next week.